Hello, and welcome to another edition of BNEWS In Depth. I'm your host, Rich Hosford. This month we're going to tackle an issue that has been much in the news the last few years: student athletes, football, and safety. There's been a push by some experts and advocates to limit the exposure to tackle football among student athletes due to concerns over concussions. There's also been people involved in the game and who love it that have been pushing back against this effort. This month we're going to have two guests. First up will be State Rep Ken Gordon, who will explain to us the details of a House bill that would limit tackle football among younger athletes. Then BHS coach Dan MacKay will talk to us about the game and how recent changes have made it safer for all involved. I'm now joined by State Rep Ken Gordon to talk about House Bill 2007. I just sort of get some of the details. Thanks for coming in, Ken.
Thank you for having me, Rich, and it's an interesting bill to talk about.
Yeah, I know it is, and I know you signed on to it, but you weren't one of the authors. Neither one of them have agreed to come in, so you get
You get me.
I get you to come in. It falls on you. So let's just start and talk, just what it does.
Okay, well, what it does is it would ban organized tackle football until the 8th grade. So it's directed at youth football, and what it would say is basically you could still have youth football if it was flag football or a different type of football, but the introduction of tackling would occur in the 8th grade.
And how did it come about?
Well, we had a number of actually professional. First of all, I wasn't the author, as you said.
Yeah, I know.
So they didn't come to talk to me personally.
Right.
But I know it came about because we had college coaches, high school coaches, and some professional athletes come in and say, we're concerned about the incidence of concussive CTE and concussive syndrome among football players. That doesn't necessarily mean just the football players that make their way through the colleges and the pros, because that's an infinitesimally small percentage of kids that play football, young kids who play football. But there was a study done at BU, and there were other studies that we saw showing that when the brain is not fully developed as it is in children, we don't have the same wall of protection inside our brain. The fluids aren't built up quite that way, and so the brain, because there's sort of more room in there, it's sort of like shaking up a bottle of ginger ale, having sort of a ball inside that bottle. There's just a lot of room.
Okay.
I think I'm going into some detail, but that's what happened. They showed us the science of it, and many of us became concerned about the effect of repeat head trauma among children.
Did they talk about what some of those issues can manifest in later in life?
Yeah, I mean, they talked about Parkinson's disease comes about more significantly. Now, remember that what they're looking at in children is these children that they're studying aren't in their 50s and 60s and 70s yet.
Right.
But scientifically, there's a connection between repeat head trauma and and various brain disease, including Parkinson's and other behavioral brain issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've been seeing in the news, especially the last few years of going back to the NFL, but former players talking about, just feeling like they're in pain all the time, not sleeping well, a lot of issues that have come from, what they say is repeated head injuries that they sustained during their career. Of course, that's talking about, a whole higher level of play, but still,
right.
Same kind of injuries.
For them, they're looking at their life having been shortened. For them, they're looking at behavioral changes, mental health issues, and suicidal tendencies. And we know that there have been players who have committed suicide and then, allowed science to study their brains and as a link toward repeat head trauma and the mental illness that they suffer.
And was there any? Again, I know you're not the author, but can talk about other types of injuries besides concussions and head injuries, because tackle football does open up to broken bones, joint issues, things like that.
It is, but when we're talking about small children playing with small children, we're also talking about the speeds with respect to these other bones not being as much of a concern. Certainly injuries happen, and we know that.
Yeah.
Not only bones, but also joints and pulled muscles and things like that. Well, that happens a lot, but it doesn't. You can recover from that.
Right.
This is something that is long term and not recoverable.
And where's the bill now, and like what's the future look like?
The bill's in committee. It's been heard. There's no decision made on it. We've had a number of people come in to talk about it, arguing both sides of the bill. We've had a number of parents coming in and some youth coaches talking about why it's unnecessary. And we've had other coaches coming in from the college level and from the high school level and some from the youth level talking about not only is there utility in looking at this type of thing, but also what's the balance? In other words, what do kids really get out of the opportunity to participate in tackle football that's not there when it comes to, for example, flag football or another kind of football? Rich, I don't know about you, but I grew up playing football. I loved playing football as a little kid. My father actually played very briefly at Penn State.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was important to him. My father was young when I was born. He was in his early 20s, so we got to play football a lot, and it's something I'll never forget. I lost him 30 years ago now, but those memories of playing football with other kids, and my father would kind of get involved, and then we played in school in an organized fashion. We played flag football, and the memories I have of playing football are the time I caught a long touchdown pass, the time that I intercepted a pass, the time that I ran a kickoff back for, actually it was the 2-yard line and it wasn't quite a touchdown, but I remember that. It's the running, the passing, the catching. It's all those fun things that as a kid I think that make the sport interesting, fun, and the most important thing I think in any youth sport is to encourage the kids to keep playing.
Right.
That teamwork, that camaraderie is so important. Just bring them back again. So when I coached Little League Baseball for a few years, that was what we were told. I coached soccer and took courses in coaching kids soccer, and the issue is it's not first graders, second graders, they're not going to develop the skills that they're going to bring all the way forward into high school and maybe get a scholarship. That's so far in the future for these kids. It's make it fun.
Right.
Do the drills that make it fun. And that's what we focus on. And so the fun part of football, I don't think, if you were really to ask 8-year-old kids or 7-year-old kids, how much fun is it to knock a kid to the ground? I don't think they would say that's the most fun.
Right.
They would say, it's when I throw the ball, it's when I catch the ball, it's when I run around a kid and get past the kid. I mean, that's the fun part.
Right.
I think we should keep that. And so I wonder how important it is that we have to hold on to the tackle part.
Yeah, so the general idea being that the risks of possible injury outweigh the need for them to be engaging in the full game so early on in life.
Yeah, you probably know I was a sports writer in my first career. I covered football. I still have friends who played football. That was a long time ago, but they still have opinions about this issue, and almost universally, those who went through this sport say that they have trouble allowing their kids, as young kids, or having allowed them, their kids are older now, to play. And I was talking to an All-American quarterback from Northeastern who is one of my good friends. We were at a Dartmouth football game a few weeks ago. We talked about this bill. And he said, I just don't think there's a need for it. He currently coaches as a volunteer adults on the North Shore. And he said, there's really nothing that we could teach little 5, 6, 7-year-olds about tackling that we couldn't teach them when they got to middle school or high school. That part we can, what we want is kids to come into high school, as I said, enthused and ready and ready to make that commitment. And he said, we could teach them the tackling part at that point.
Right. Now you said you had people come in. What has been some of the arguments on the other side?
No, it's an issue of families participate in youth football, and they want it to continue to. It's important to. It's a family activity. It's a fun family activity. Of course, it is, and you get into a community, and it's important to some of these families. In fact, I had a large number of families come in Bedford from Pop Warner, from the local Pop Warner team, right? And I told them one of the issues is that with respect to football, there's no statewide governing body. that we could talk to and say, well, what if we did this, that, or the other thing? And Pop Warner is a very responsible league. And I had folks from Pop Warner here in Burlington and also in Bedford explain the restrictions that have been put in place. So it's heads up football. Their head isn't down spearing, and they're taught these things. And the opinion I have is if all of the kids were taught in that way, we wouldn't have such a problem. Mm-hmm. And so the idea that I raised, I should say,
yeah.
that I raised to the committee is, what if we require that all of the sports join, all of the leagues, I should say, there's about 13 around the state. What if they join the same governing body that Pop Warner is in, which is called USA Football? And if you go on USA Football's site, they have seminars for coaches, just like we had when I coached soccer. I had to sign up, and I had to be I think it was called a G level, is that entry level, at least go that far. I couldn't just come off the street and coach soccer. They didn't, right? So for football,
it's good they have those things in place.
Yeah.
To make sure people know what they're doing.
Right, and so part of the training deals with concussive syndrome, right? Now, again, it's two different things. It's concussive syndrome, it's that big hit. Mm-hmm. People say, well, soccer kids hit their heads against each other. It's accidental, but it happens. Of course that's true. Yeah. In flag football, you could hit your heads against each other, and that is true. But the issue with tackle football is that it's repetitive.
Right.
It's part of the game.
Right, that contact is
hitting.
Involved.
Right.
Is the point of it, not an accidental part.
Right. In youth soccer, they've banned checking until age 13, right? So they've taken that part out, and that's because there's a governing body that can do that. But in football, there's no governing body in play. However, there is this governing body, USA Football, and I'm comfortable if the various leagues in Massachusetts were required to join this in order to organize and do what they need to do. And then, just like other sports, the coaches receive some minimal level of training so that they know a little bit more about the nature of these injuries and what they can do to prevent it. That would be fine.
So in your opinion, what Pop Warner is doing is better than what some other organizations in the state are doing?
Right.
And
my opinion is what Pop Warner explained to me exactly what they're doing, which really satisfies what I think should be done. So I think that the parents that have their kids in Pop Warner leagues should know that I believe their kids are being protected. It's just that in other youth leagues, they haven't come forward to explain that at all. But as I said, Pop Warner explained to me that that's because they send their coaches to these programs through USA Football. So if the other leagues want to do the same thing, I don't think there's a need to enforce this no hits ban, the provisions of the bill. I talked to the committee too. I think that it's a bill that gets a conversation started.
Okay.
And I think it's a conversation that we should have. But we file about 4,000 bills each session, and maybe 300 get filed and get passed into law. And oftentimes, and I've filed a few of these types of bills, it's caused action short of a law.
Yeah,
it's just solved the problem.
Okay. Excuse me. So maybe because they explained it to you, it's just so people at home, because we are in the Pop Warner area. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that they do differently that make you sort of a little bit more satisfied that they're dealing with the safety issues?
Right, and you're using the word differently. I'm not really saying that it's different. It's just that they have a standard that they live up to, and they do this. And I don't know if these other leagues have such a standard.
Okay, so what do they do then that sort of, demonstrates to you that they have proper safety protocols?
Yeah, right. And what they've explained is that first of all, their coaches do get trained because they are members of USA Football. So they do have preparation. They do understand the heads-up nature of going into blocking and tackling, that they're not putting their helmet down and creating this helmet-to-helmet contact because their kids aren't looking. And that's the way that league plays its games, is in a heads-up way, avoiding and understanding why they're avoiding the dangerous types of tackling that could give rise to concussions or to repeat head trauma. They don't. The kickoff. They don't have. They don't start with a kickoff. Things like that. So they modify
people running
rules.
all the way across the field.
Yeah, that's more dangerous, right? They're running at full head of speed.
Right.
So, they have that in play. So these modifications, I think, are important, and we could get to a solution in that way as well.
Right. And
At least that's my opinion. I
yeah,
don't
yeah,
speak for
absolutely.
everybody.
And you're the only one that would come in, so
Right, but
your
I mean,
opinion we get to hear.
Right, but I'm not promising that the committee shares everything that I believe. I am promising I've talked to the committee about that, and
Right.
they're receptive to compromise.
And I think everybody has the same general goal in mind. We want kids to enjoy the game, and we want them to be safe. As they're playing and later in life.
I think so. I mean, I think that there are two attitudes really in play societally, and one is that parents have a right to make choices for their families,
Mm-hmm.
right? And on the other hand, the government traditionally has taken measures to protect children in ways that don't apply to adults. For example, children can't smoke cigarettes. We raised the age for smoking cigarettes to 21, right?
Mm-hmm.
Children can't drink. Children can't enter a contract. Children can't take out a loan.
Sure.
Things like that. There's a lot of things that we do to protect kids because they're not fully developed. Whether their parents want the kids to smoke cigarettes or not, right? And then there's the other area where parents have the right to make decisions, that best suits their family. So if we find scientifically that kids' health is at risk, where does that fall along that line? And
Right.
at least it's a conversation because I think most of us can see both sides of that argument where it appears that kids may be at risk of getting permanently injured.
All right. So you said it's been reviewed, it's in committee, so it's probably, what's the next thing that might happen?
Well, the committee would decide whether they're going to release the bill with approval, meaning that they would release it to either the House or the Senate. I think it would probably go to the House.
Mm-hmm.
It was filed with bipartisan support because you mentioned the two representatives who filed it are Paul Schmid, who is a Democrat from the South Shore, and Brad Jones, who's a Republican, actually the minority leader from North Reading.
Right.
So they co-filed it. It would probably, if the committee releases it, it goes to the House. If the committee recommends that we engage in further study, it's not quite ready for a vote or with brief amendment, with various amendments for that vote, then we could further study it.
Okay.
I expect in the type of a bill that we're talking about, especially with the conversation that maybe there are ways to address this issue without an outright ban,
Right.
that maybe a further study is appropriate, but I
Yeah.
can't tell you what the decision of the committee would be.
And then I think what you suggested earlier, that having the bill just exist was a way of getting a conversation started and people to learn more about the issues, both from on your guys' side and from the Pop Warner or the other football organizational side. So
Yeah, it's interesting the way that happens sometimes. I had a bill that dealt with the telephone industry, and I won't go far into it, but after I testified about it, I had the representative from the phone company from Verizon say, "Really, we're doing that?" Because I had it recorded. Right? I said, "Yeah." He said, "All right," and within a week, the whole policy changed. Right? And said, "Yeah, okay, then we don't need a law that would address this because they were willing to change. It's just that they didn't address my concern until the right person heard it when I was testifying at a hearing, and
right.
then it worked." And so it could be in this case, and I think if I was to predict, I think it will be in this case, that we can allow youth football to continue while at the same time protecting our kids.
Very good. And then I think everybody wins in that scenario. So
Right. I think that really is the goal, right?
Right. Keeping kids
Because,
safe.
yeah, it's a great sport.
It
We
is.
all had fun. It was fun sharing my memories of it as a little kid. But we all had fun playing, and we all had fun watching sports. And it's a great bonding experience with our family and with our parents. I mean, so are the Red Sox, frankly. But,
Well, of course.
That
was my sport as a kid.
There you go. and I loved watching the Giants and the Patriots together with my father when I was growing up. I mean, that's a different situation than youth sport. But like I said, playing the sport with him was just great. And I wouldn't want anyone to take that from me. Just need to be protected when we do it.
Very good. I think we'll leave it there. Sounds like a good place to end the conversation. So
All right,
thank you
Rich.
very much for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
We go now to my discussion with Coach Dan MacKay about how the game of football has been changing in recent years to be safer for student athletes, how limiting younger players from properly learning how to tackle can raise other safety concerns, and his thoughts in general on the importance of the game. Let's take a look.
And now for our talk from the player coaching side, I have BHS head coach for the Red Devils football team, Dan MacKay. Dan, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Rich.
So I appreciate you coming in and talking about this. I know it's something that has been getting a lot of interest in the news recently in the last couple of years. Just talk about football today. How is it different from say 10, 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, so a lot has changed from that time period. Actually, when I was playing in high school, playing in college. So now every single coach has to be concussion certified. We have to take a 20 to 30 minute course every year and take a little quiz on it after. The way we teach the game is a lot different now too. For example, we teach shoulder tackling now, where you're taking the head out of the tackle. We also have taken the head out of how we block. We teach how to play with hips and hands when we block, how to defeat blocks. It's the same thing. In practice, there's not a lot. When we're working tackling in practice, when we're working blocking in practice, we're on bags doing that to limit the contact in practice.
Okay.
They're really the only time in practice now where we're going body against bodies when we're doing our team sessions, which are about 15 minutes long. So about a total of 30 minutes in practice. Other than that, we're working the fundamental skills where we're working the skill of tackling, how to do it, the skill of blocking, how to do it, and keeping it safer for everybody. I mean, the game is safer now than it's ever been. USA Football has a lot of great stuff out there, a lot of great content out there that they do for both Pop Warner and for high school. It's so easy to access these techniques and how to teach them and be specific with terminology nowadays with the internet and all that. So the game has improved leaps and bounds from then, and it is safer than it has ever been. I mean, I have a son. I can't wait till he plays. I have no apprehensions about him playing either.
Okay, well, excellent. And has there been improvements in safety equipment as well?
They have come out with, Rydell has come out with some new helmets, and I know the NFL is working on a helmet now, trying to make it as concussion proof as possible, but I don't know how close they are to doing that. The equipment has improved, it's gotten better. The helmets are lighter and they're much more comfortable and easier to use. But there's the techniques, how you teach the techniques, that's really how you're going to make the game safer, because there's not a helmet or a piece of equipment that can protect against poor coaching or teaching poor techniques.
Now, is a lot of the emphasis, I'm guessing, it sounds like how to tackle safely and how to do things. So that's sort of, you're teaching the players how not to hurt somebody else from the other team. Are there ways to sort of talk to the receivers or the people who are running the ball to, better protect themselves against the other team?
Yeah, we now, this is our first year under federation rules. So 49 out of the 50 states in the country play under federation rules, which means we can't cut block anymore. So a receiver can't go ahead and try to block a defensive back at their knees. You can't crack block out in open space anymore. You can only cut at the line of scrimmage. So there's some new rules in place to try to help with that. As far as receivers, we work stock blocking with them every single day. The way a receiver blocks is the same a lineman's going to block. It's just from a different position, a different angle. The receiver standing up instead of in a stance, coming out of a stance. But it's the same techniques. It's the same basic fundamentals that we teach there. Defensively, the way we teach to get up blocks is the same for a defensive lineman. It's the same for a corner or defensive back. It's always the same. It's just a matter of where you are on the field. Okay. So those techniques they've worked well for us. We've seen the benefits of them. Our concussions have been way down. Concussions have been down, I would say, since my first year, which was 3 years ago, they've been down a lot.
Okay.
I would say like my first year we had like 10 to 15. We've only had 2 or 3 this year, 6 games in.
Okay, 2 or 3. And so we talk about what you can do. Do you also, are you seeing in other, teams in the league that everybody is sort of acting in good faith and kind of putting in the same practices?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have moved to the shoulder tackle system that the USA Football's put out, that the Seattle Seahawks put out, and they just spin it however they want to teach it. But I think a lot of people are teaching that. Not only because it's safer, but it's a better technique. It's easier to tackle someone at their legs than it is up high if it's a bigger type of body. So it allows a smaller defensive back to be able to tackle a running back who might be a little bit bigger, where you're just taking on that 30-pound leg instead of the running back's entire body. So I think it's more effective. It's a more effective way to tackle, and the safety part is just a bonus, in my opinion. Like, for example, the way we teach it, we're taking our near shoulder, it's going through the near thigh, and our coaching points, our eyes are going to go through the thighs, so our head is up. Our near shoulder is going to go through the thigh. We're going to wrap and squeeze the legs and then run our feet on contact. So it's something we work every single day, and it's very effective. It still allows you to be very physical playing the game, but it keeps the tackler safe at the same time. So it's been effective for us, and we enjoy coaching it that way.
Excellent. Now, we've been talking a lot about concussions. Have there been changes in recent times to kind of address other types of injuries, like bone fractures or muscle injuries or ligaments, anything like that?
Right. So the process that we use at the high school level, if there is any kind of injury, we have a trainer out there in the field with us every single day. So if there is an injury, the trainer addresses it immediately, and the trainer will decide whether or not the person is okay or not okay. So we have a certified trainer every day. So if something does happen, they make the call there, not us. We are, as coaches, though, we are CPR and first aid certified in case something like that does happen.
Right.
But the more serious injuries, that's the trainer during games, during practice, even the concussion stuff. If we see something, we take them out right away. Trainer sees them, runs them through a battery of tests that they have. And there's a whole protocol to come back if they were to have a concussion or something like that. But other fractures, things like that, the trainer sees them first, and the trainer would recommend whether or not they need to go see a doctor or go get x-rays or something like that.
Yeah, you sort of just touched on it real briefly, but so if somebody does get injured, a concussion,
right,
it's not just relying on the student athlete saying, "I'm good, let me back in." So what is the procedure then?
Right. So if something happens, the trainer goes through whatever they go through with them, and they wouldn't let them back on if they didn't feel like they have a series of tests they do with them on the sideline, and if something's off even slightly, then they're not going to get let back on the field. At that point, the parent is notified of what happened with the possible concussion. A doctor needs to be seen, and then if they're cleared, once they're cleared by the doctor, once they're symptom-free for, I believe it's 2 or 3 days, I don't know the exact number, that's what the trainers handle. There's a period of time where they have to be symptom-free, no headaches, no dizziness, no sensitivity to light, and things of that nature. Once they're symptom-free, they start a 5-day protocol. So most of the kids for us will take what is called an impact test. So the trainer has a baseline of what they are normally.
Right.
And then after they're symptom-free, they'll take that impact test again, and the trainer can compare it to see what's going on. If it's the same, then okay, now we can go through there's a 5-day protocol where the student athlete is progressed back into being cleared to play. So once they're symptom-free, they then have another 5 days where they start to go through different exercises and they build themselves up. And if they are symptom-free for those 5 days after going through those exercises, then they'll be cleared to play. So there's a process there to make sure that they are not coming back too soon.
Right. And you mentioned that a lot of the players have that initial assessment before they even start playing.
Yeah, that's a voluntary thing. That's up to them and their parents whether or not they want to do it. It's not required. It's something that's voluntary, but a lot of them will do it just so you have that baseline.
Right.
Yeah.
So you can compare apples to apple, the same apple.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. Yes. Yep.
And what kind of, I'm sure that parents have a lot of questions before they, let their kids play a sport like football. What kind of information is sort of presented, before the season even begins?
Yeah, so I have 2 meetings with the parents. I do a meeting in June before we start the season, and in that meeting I go over what we're doing over the summer. So over the summer for us is a big strength and conditioning period for us. Strength and conditioning, not only, obviously it builds our body up, makes us more explosive, makes us a better athlete. In football, you have to do it nowadays. If you don't, you're going to get left behind really quick. But it also helps with injury prevention, like your joints, your limbs. It helps with concussion. The studies have shown that student athletes who consistently strengthen condition, they are less likely to have a concussion. So I sell that to them. And then I obviously go through our protocols that we have with the trainer and how we do everything over the summer, when we're going to lift, when our 7-on-7 league is, things of that nature. And then in August, that's when I'll go through our protocols for if a student athlete is injured. They need to see the trainer first before they see a doctor. Trainer will recommend going to see a doctor if something happens. I go through our concussion protocol, and I go through the things we've been talking about, how we're making the game safer, the things that we're doing. I'll go into detail about what we're doing in practice and from a teaching perspective on the fundamentals of tackling and blocking to make it safer for our student athletes. And not only does it make it safer, but it makes them a better player because you can play more physical and keep yourself safe at the same time. So I'll go through all those things with the parents in August before we start the season, so they're clear on how we operate as a program, how we teach things, how we're making it safer for student athletes, just to try to put their minds at ease a little bit, because there's a lot of, I will say, extreme rhetoric out there that I don't necessarily agree with right now.
Yeah, we're going to get to some of that in a bit. But just still on the parents, with all that out there, have you been hearing more concerns, or do you think a lot of parents are sort of clear-eyed about what they're getting in, what their child is getting into? Or?
No, I would say nowadays, parents are definitely more concerned about. I've had 3 student athletes that have not been able to play because their parents don't want them to. They want to play. They're good student athletes, but their parents don't want to play football because of the concerns with concussions and things of that nature. So it's definitely something you see a lot more. It's a battle that we're still fighting. So one of the things that I do is in January we'll get a list of the incoming 8th graders that are interested in playing football, and I'll start contacting their parents to let them know how we do things here, just to try to put them at ease and let them know who I am and that we are trying to do things the right way here to make it safer for them, and that it is a great game and we want them to play and things of that nature. But yeah, there's still people out there, and it's their decision, it's fine, that are apprehensive about their child playing football.
Yeah.
And I've come across it here in Burlington. Yeah.
And one of the ways that's manifesting possibly now is that there's a bill that has been filed in the State House, H207, if I want to show off my knowledge there. Yeah. But anyway, it would essentially stop tackle football for anyone under the 8th grade, so like Pop Warner level. Right. All the little children up until they're right about to become teenagers. What are your thoughts on that move?
Well, I disagree with it. I think I'm going to talk from my perspective right now, my experience. So I played Pop Warner football. I started playing when I was 8, played all the way through high school, played 4 years in college. So Pop Warner football was some of the most fun times I had as a kid. I loved going to practice. I loved playing in games. Loved playing high school football. Loved playing college football. If you want to prevent kids from getting injured, you need to teach them how to play. Now, I don't think kids 5 years old should be playing football. I think anywhere in that 4th to 5th grade range is a good time to start playing Pop Warner football. And if you want to be good at something, you need to do it over and over again. So if you're going to ask these kids to not start playing tackle football until 8th or 9th grade, well, to me, you're putting them behind the 8 ball, because now they haven't been able to practice and play from when they were younger. They haven't learned how to tackle yet. They haven't learned how to block yet. So now you're making it, in my opinion, more dangerous for them to play. I think these bills are just a reaction to all this whatever political stuff about football that's going on right now. Kids aren't NFL players. The NFL players, they have different issues with the CTE because they are big, fast, and strong. They're all well over, they're way bigger than they've ever been. You get linemen that are over 300 pounds. You have linebackers running 4.5, 40s that are 250 pounds. If they're running full speed into another 240-pound guy, yeah, they're going to get messed up a little bit.
Right.
Kids weigh like 80 pounds, 90 pounds, whatever it is in their range. If they're being taught the right way, which Pop Warner coaches, I believe a lot of them are certified in the USA Football tackling techniques and blocking techniques. If they're being taught the right way, then they're going to learn how to play the game correctly, and that's how it's going to evolve and get better. So in my opinion, to make it better, you should force coaches should have to be certified in the shoulder tackling technique and the proper fundamentals of blocking, all of them across the board, if they want to coach Pop Warner football, to put people's minds at ease there as well. And we have great coaches here in Burlington. I know them very well. I do a great job. So I think, taking away tackle football from it should be, and another point, it should be the parent's choice. It's a free country. Last time I checked, we should be able to have the choice of whether or not we want to let our sons try and play football. And if they don't like it, they don't like it. That's fine. I don't have to play anymore. But I loved it. I know a lot of my friends loved it. I know there's a lot of kids out there now that love it. So why would you take that away from them? I don't see any bills being introduced to take away bikes from kids. I think that could be way more dangerous. I don't see any bills that prevents 16-year-olds from driving a car. I think that's way more dangerous than playing football. But we want to focus on football, and it's to me, it's a shame from my perspective of someone who really loves the game. I think it would be a shame if it passed. I'm hoping it doesn't. I think it would take away from the game. I think it's the wrong way to address what people perceive as issues with the game that I don't see. It's safer than it's ever been. It's safer than it's ever been. It's taught better than it's ever been taught. I think it's ridiculous, personally.
Yeah, one of the interesting things that you had mentioned in your answer that I hadn't thought about was that having the students or the athletes not practice safe tackling techniques until they are at a bigger level is actually maybe perhaps introduces a different kind of danger.
Right, because now you're in 8th grade coming in and you're learning how to do something for the first time instead of having done it for X amount of years. Now there are some kids who come in their freshman year and they end up being great players. Right. But there are kids that are ahead of them that have played before that already kind of understand how the game works. And now you have a lot goes into a football team. offensively, defensively, and special teams. So now these kids have no background whatsoever on what's going on with football. They might have played flag, but it's not the same thing. You're just throwing the ball in flag. There's no real blocking, and so now they come in with no background knowledge on what football is. So you got to teach them everything from the kind of the ground up, and I think it's detrimental to the game and to the player's safety personally.
Yeah, I know. I can see that point. I thought what you were going to say was, they wouldn't be as competitive, and therefore they'd be at a disadvantage, which could be countered with, well, if everybody in the state has the same rules. But your point of, they're actually going to be less prepared, and at the same time that they're older.
And I mean, I have a son. He'll be 2 next month, and I am not nervous. I mean, I'm going to introduce him to the game when he's like 8 or 9, and if he likes it, awesome. If he doesn't, it is what it is. But I am not nervous about signing him up to play football whatsoever. Haven't played myself, and there I am. I'm still here, rocking and rolling, functioning human being. So I think it'd be a shame. I'd feel sorry for him if that bill did pass and he wasn't allowed to. I just think it's the government overstepping their bounds. It should be the parents' choice.
Well said. And, so we've been talking a lot about, potential dangers and risks of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be, it's a little off topic from what, we were talking about as far as the focus of the show, but I did want to give you an opportunity to sort of talk up the game. And what are some of the advantages that you see as far as, character development, discipline, things that you see that, maybe football players, other athletes as well, but just, the importance of, a team game like football?
Oh, yeah, I could talk about a lot of things, but the first one that comes to mind is, so to me, football is kind of a microcosm of life. You're going to get knocked down. You might get beat up on one play. You might get knocked down. You might get beat up in one game. But what makes a successful person in life and in football is they continue to get back up, they continue to work hard, and they keep pushing forward. Football seasons become very difficult because it is such a physical game. You practice 5 days a week. You do all this preparation. You play once. You get one shot at it each week. So it teaches you that, hey, you're going to lose sometimes in life, but it's how you respond to it that's going to make you better. And then you add in the team aspect. In life, you're going to have a job someday. You're going to have to learn how to work with people. To be very successful in football, every single player on the team, every student athlete on the team has to be able to work together. That's why our mantra is 9 strong. Every single player playing to our standard and getting things done in school to our standard. And so you get that team building part, you get the character part, which is learning how to respond when things don't go your way. And then it's just physically and mentally becoming a tougher person. You have to, the mental part of football is the toughest part. It's kind of, you can run around, you can block people. It's the mental part. It's, can you push through things when you got a couple bruises on your body? Can you continue to push through for your teammates? Can you continue to push through? Because someday when you have a family, you have to be able to do those things. And I think it prepares you for work later on in life, for having a family later on in life, because if you can get through a football season, it makes those things a little bit easier. So when you face tough times in life later on, you know how to handle those because you faced adversity during football. It makes you a stronger person, in my opinion. So it helps kind of develop a well-rounded person. And that's why I think the game is great. I mean, obviously winning things like that, it's awesome, but being with your buddies and playing and working hard and sacrificing all the time, that's what makes it awesome.
All right. Very good. Well, I very much appreciate you coming in, sharing your thoughts and and knowledge about what's going on as far as football and safety.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So there you have it, a deep look at the issues of football and safety. I'd like to thank my guests, State Rep Ken Gordon and BHS Head Coach Dan MacKay for joining us this month. I'd also like to thank all of you for watching. We'll be back with another edition of BNews In Depth next month, so stay tuned.